Welcome to Searching for the Question Live. This is episode 22, Open Source Everything. My name is David Orban and I am very glad to have you on the show. Before we start, I want to remind you that even if we are live, you can always watch past episodes, both on Facebook and on YouTube. On YouTube, you can also subscribe to the channel. We also have a Discord community, and I invite you to join on davidorban.com/discord. And finally, if you find the show valuable, as well as the other content that I produce and the knowledge that I share, you are welcome to become a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/davidorban. Today's guest is Gabor Kiss. Gabor is an inspirational creative thinker and activist working on transformational projects. He's the chairman of Envienta, an alternative lifestyle of the near future that through the technology of the present and free tools is building new communities that are now becoming ever more valuable and important. You can find him on Twitter, and welcome, Gabriel, to the show.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
Magyarul is beszélhetnénk, de nem nagyon értenének minket, úgyhogy azt hiszem, hogy inkább angolul
Rendben.
fogunk.
Okay.
we are both Hungarian, so this was a little joke played on you because I just said we could very well speak Hungarian, but nobody could understand it. Do you know, Gabor, actually, that that is what Oppenheimer used to say to Fermi during the Manhattan Project?
Yes, very aware of that.
Yeah, if we only left these crazy Hungarians could build a bomb, and there wouldn't be any problem of spying because nobody could understand them.
Yeah, but they were the great scientists in the past from here. Yeah.
So thank you for joining. And you and I met the first time 5 years ago when you were one of the speakers at the Network Society World Congress in Turin, where we spoke about how new technologies are going to lead to a potential new socio-economic organization that I call Network Society, and how decentralization is going to be a very important component of this new phase in society. And already at the time you were working on the themes and the concepts and the projects that we will mention. But before we talk about that, tell us a little bit about you and your experience, the path that brought you here, because you have different hats and different backgrounds. One of them, quite unexpectedly, but really interestingly, in music. Is that correct?
Yes, when I was 14, I just got my first computer from my grandpa. And he asked if there's a guitar, what you need, or something else. And I said, I need a computer and I want to make music on it. So that was the first time when I started to get into the music and composing mostly. But later, as my parents were engineers, both engineers, one of them is my mom was an environmental engineer, and my dad was mostly a machinery and tool engineer. So it was quite obvious that I will be some kind of engineer. So when I started to draw some things, it turned out that I would be great in architecture. So I went to an architecture school, but the music stayed with me. So I wrote a lot of songs, not just for myself, but other artists, and also for the music company, which allowed us to go to a broader audience.
We have quite a few viewers, and many of them come from pages that are not my own, but that kindly invited me to natively share this show on because we are streaming live
Hmm.
simultaneously to many platforms, to YouTube, to Twitter,
Sure.
and to several Facebook pages for a total of a potential audience, not necessarily a simultaneous audience, of more than 1.5 million subscribers and likes. And I want to invite our viewers to send their comments or smileys, as Emiliano is saying, and they are already sending you their welcome wishes. Um, and
Thank you.
we are already getting the first questions. Emiliano is asking if Orban and Kish have a specific meaning in Hungarian. So why don't you tell about your last name and I will tell about mine.
Okay. Um, I don't know much about my origins, but the kish is something like it means small or little in Hungarian. But in English, it's much funnier because it means kiss.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we are both lucky because in Hungarian we could have had incredibly complicated last names
Yeah, yeah. But it's
like
very short.
Vazarelli, who simplified his name, and it is still not too simple. One of the inventors of the op art movement, and uh, Albert Laszlo Barabashi, who
Yes.
is a very well-known
From
scientist
MIT. Yeah.
and analyst of network science. I
Sure.
have his books in my shelf opposite me. Maybe I will
The
pick one
last one
up.
is very interesting. Yeah.
Oh yeah, about the
The
reasons
success. Yeah.
for success, where
Sure.
rather than analyzing the network, he's analyzing the nodes and the characteristics of the nodes. Um, and to go back to Emiliano's question, my last name Orban is fairly common. As you know, the Prime Minister of Hungary has my same last name. We are not otherwise related. And I was actually asked once my own opinion about the origin of the name by a guy who is Belgian. He was at the time working for the United Nations, and he created an entire website about the last name Orban because there are different groups, one of them in Hungary, one of them in Belgium. Apparently, they are not related. And at the time, I provided him with a hypothesis about the origin that he didn't have, because I like to believe that Orban comes from Latin urbanus, which means city dweller. So I don't know if it is true, but I think that is the origin that I like. And I also would like to show, I like to do this. Yesterday's guest was from Canada, but he lives in Nairobi, and so we shared the screen of Google Earth, showing where he was in Canada, originally born,
Hmm.
and then where he currently was in in Africa. So, since we have a lot of viewers from Pakistan, I would like to show what and where is Hungary, because you are now in Budapest, Gabor.
Yeah. Sure. I stuck here.
Well, yes. So I am speaking to you from Italy, here near the north in Bergamo, and Hungary is here in the middle of Europe, and Budapest is in the middle of Hungary, and it's the capital city with about 2 million people, which in Pakistani dimensions may not be a lot, but it is 20% of the entire country's population. So for
Yeah,
Hungarians,
and
it's still a lot.
and it's mostly historical town, so it's not designed for the 21st century. So 2 million people is maybe too
Plenty.
much for, yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so we can keep playing with this because, of course, is beautiful. And anybody with a high-speed internet connection, I greatly recommend exploring Google Earth. If you have a VR headset, uh, it is even better because you can fly in the middle of buildings in 3D. And I am not exactly sure how. Oh, there you go. This is what I wanted to do exactly. So
Cool.
this is the old city of Budapest with um, the. That's not what I wanted to do, but okay.
Where we go now?
I don't know what is happening. I don't
We're
know
going
what
to
is. We
Canada.
went back to we went back to Nairobi in Africa.
But Nairobi,
Okay.
okay.
So I greatly recommend playing with Google Earth. You can learn so much, and you can have so really
Yeah.
so intimate understanding. Even with Google Maps and Street View, I became so accustomed checking out the destination where I have to go that sometimes people insist on the phone. Oh yeah, then you turn left, you turn right, and I stop them and say, "You mean the red building, right? Oh, you have already been here." And I
No,
tell
on
them, "No,
Google
I
Earth. Google Earth.
haven't, but
Yeah.
I am using Google, right?"
Before arrival. Yeah, useful.
So let's jump ahead and tell me about your becoming interested in what you are doing now. Let's define what you are doing now, if that is
Mhm.
possible. Starting simply, and then we can add more complicated parts to it,
Yes,
right?
that's what I can do because that is a process. And what I've seen in my activity, including this Envienta project, that at least 10 years ago, I started to hmm, make some research on economical trends, just because I went to a lot of countries and traveled so much, but I've seen the same patterns of what could go better or what could go wrong. And that's I started to learn about and economics and get some books. And I started to write a book actually because during the years when I was a musician, I got a lot of time. And then somehow back to my architecture experience, one of my friends just came to me and asked that, okay, you are living in the Canary Islands and we want to go there for a summer holiday. And they wanted to see how the territory or the area is available to build some self-sustainable dwellings or houses or homes. And I got the challenge, and Peter, one of my friends, just came there in Gran Canaria. And just for fun, we started to make the blueprints of uh, let's say smart homes that include some renewable energy sources, including with the smart garden system, vertical gardening, aeroponics, hydroponics, and all this stuff, which you probably need in the 21st century if there's a need for that. So it was mostly an off-grid planning. And our thought was about this, okay, we did this work in our holiday time, so why don't we share it on the internet with others? Because Peters has this very strong vision of, okay, if we can make it open source, that would be great. And that's why we started to write about these ideas that how to build homes, off-grid homes, and how you get those technologies into the places where you live. And that's how our project started. And during that time, I made some research on economical trends and also social trends, and not just in a technical uh, areas. And that was the time when I met with you, David, and that's where our project started. and it's called Envienta. And this Envienta project is focusing on open source technologies mostly. First of
So
all, yeah,
how far are we from this ideal of being able to click on a web page and for a team,
mhm,
potentially of a local set of makers and partners,
that's how it
to
works.
come and say, okay, uh, in a week you will have your house,
Mhm.
you will have your hydroponic or your solar or
Yeah,
whatever other
as you
components
said,
are in the vision.
as you said, one part of it that it depends on people or a collective vision of people when and recorded cooperatives. And when these cooperatives are able to produce those modular houses, which we can design and share on our platform, then we can see a lot of advancements in mostly the underdeveloped part of the world because they missed at least to revolution of technological revolution. And
So
now,
what you mean
yeah,
is that they have the opportunity to leapfrog, for
yeah, that's it.
example, not care about the fact that they don't have the telegraph because nobody wants the telegraph
Yeah,
anymore,
because now
and
everyone
soon,
has a mobile
hopefully,
phone.
not care about that they don't have a lot of cars or the ability to more rapidly
Hmm.
eliminate internal combustion cars because more flexible and environmentally sustainable electric cars are going to be extremely
Yes, but the key point is,
affordable and
yeah, but the key point is here, I think the access to information, and that's what the internet has, the opportunity to give to have the information, and the information could be a blueprint of a wind turbine also. And if you can find local resources and local cooperation, you can build it on your own, actually.
so Emiliano is asking what is the difference between Envienta and the typical concept of a tiny house.
The tiny house is a platform in a platform because Ambienta is providing a platform not just for houses, but any other kind of innovations. So, for example, when we seen this water crisis back in Cape Town, we just made a few hackathons in collaboration with other European and African partners, and providing blueprints for local producers. So it's not just about the house, but any kind of solution which they need.
Uh, Now, tell us more about the concept of open source. When you say open source, you are referring mostly because you cited it repeatedly to the practical ability to build and create and reproduce based on blueprints, instructions. Um, so how did you come about embracing the open source concept? And is that in opposition to the ability of being able and make a profit
Hmm.
or to make a living from
Good questions.
building houses,
Good
big
questions.
or small they are?
The solution is could be one of the solution that based on the trends which we've seen in software industry in the last 20 years, that open source software runs on more than 90% of the servers, and mostly on mobile devices, and Android devices are also runs on open source platforms. So it's just a matter of time to see this open source, let's say, approach can goes into our physical reality. I mean, if you have a 3D printer, you just download the blueprint and you can have a fork or anything. And but I think we have to divide between needs and necessities, because as we go into this, let's say, crisis, uh, there is an urgent need for things which we cannot produce without importing them from other countries. So in this way, that could be a working model, because the open source approach allows us to modify anytime on the blueprints, or make a fork and another fork and another fork, just like in on GitHub in open source software. And yeah, the other thing we have to solve is the licensing model, because obviously if someone has the knowledge and the necessary resources to build something, we have to allow them to build it, to provide the necessities. But if you are living in a place when you are not able to make it because no maker spaces, no industries uh, around, you just click on it, and the platform has to find you the very near uh, manufacturers to your product, and then in this case you have to pay for it, and not just the cost of building the given device, but to pay for the original designers or innovators. So it's some kind of licensing model built on open source and Creative Commons.
And of course, it is very important for our viewers to understand and hopefully then be able to get deeper into the details of how these novel approaches are not in opposition of making something economically sustainable, but
Mhm.
they are in the direction of building a community of participation where
Sure.
somebody is not prohibited from becoming a part of the project. Somebody is not prohibited from improving it. Somebody is not prohibiting from repairing something that broke. The extremes of protection of
Yeah, and also
intellectual
quality
property.
control. Yeah,
Yeah,
and also the physical insurance of quality, the quality management,
absolutely,
which
absolutely. So
the knowledge is there at local businesses and local small manufacturers, if there is any. But we've seen a trend that goes up from 300 to 3,000 in 10 years, the number of maker spaces, which are multifunctional places with unused resources for local manufacturing. And it could, let's say, change the way how we manufacture our products on a unique way and the most sustainable way, as as we get the principles of circular economies. So let's say in 50 kilometers area, you have to find the potential collaborators between manufacturers and maker spaces.
So the fact that you said in response to my question that the project and the approach is of course not opposed to making money and making it economically sustainable is further underlined by the fact that at least part of Envienta is
Mhm.
also a startup accelerator, right?
Yes,
And those exist in order to create businesses, and you want those businesses to survive.
yes, because not let's say mm, those startups who are failing in this model, what we've seen in the last 20 years, that you know, if you cannot get bigger and bigger, you will lose, or something like that. A lot of innovation goes out the window or back in the shelf. So this is an opportunity for those startups who are thinking in terms of open source to go up on the platform and create a startup on the blockchain. So and and this type of creation of companies or cooperatives, let's say, uh, guided by smart contracts, could clarify the way how collaborators can get their portion after every sales. So it's let's say it's a contract between those who are interested in monetary terms also, that something could
Eh,
be
Emiliano
successful.
is asking a more general question. He's asking, is there a way to imagine an open source economy? And absolutely there is, so much so that there is even a Wikipedia article about the very term.
Mhm.
Open source economics is a platform based on open collaboration for the production of services or products, including software, but not only software. And there are very, very large companies that are based on open
Yes, and
source.
not just companies,
Um,
but also we call them platform cooperatives. Those
mhm.
platforms who are competing with platforms like Airbnb in the name of Airbnb or something like that. So it's a platform owned by their users and creators. So it's an interesting way to how
Oh,
to
oh, oh,
formulate
oh,
new.
of course,
Yeah.
but I think we have to take one step at a time as we try to explain to our viewers
Okay.
the concepts, because when we are talking about an open source product or service, the structure of the company can be very traditional. And the
Yes.
example here is how Linux, the operating system that is both in our computers and in our mobile phones, even if the name now is different, we call it Android or Mac
Hmm. But
OS,
based on Linux.
they are based on Linux. And Red Hat took the open source, free, no payment required Linux operating system and improved it and tinkered with it and designed courses and documentation and ported it to all kinds of computers, including mainframes. And little by little, it grew, it grew, it grew, it grew until last year, IBM acquired it for
Hmm.
$34 billion. So
Uh,
open source is a big business, even if we are just talking about
I think
traditional organizations.
I think the power in business um, in terms of open source platforms is based on the social. Um, I don't know how to say. So it's more like a social value which has in it the connection of people and the existing collaborations
Well,
and
and
big.
that is where
Yeah.
we are going towards the platform cooperative concept,
Hmm.
where the governance and the ownership structure of whatever is being done in an open source way is also embracing the participation rather than
Yes.
the exclusion.
Yes,
And
and it's
and
visible and clean.
yes, so there are a lot of examples on this Wikipedia article, and of course, the peer-to-peer foundation led by Michelle Bowens is an important source and resource for all the concepts around peer production, peer cooperation,
Yes, and they are
and
also making research on social implications, like so not just in technical terms, but on social. Yeah.
absolutely. And one of the reasons why this is important today is because with the pandemic, a lot of dogmatic assumptions that drove economic policy, financial policy, and our political institutions can be swept aside. and we can open our mindset to be much more welcoming to radical innovation, which may be needed in order to solve the increasing tension,
Hmm.
wealth and income inequality, accumulation of debt, social injustice, exclusionary methods and policies. And when we are able to embrace this kind of radical innovation and at least experiment, but hopefully also once they prove to be successful, embrace and implement widely novel structures, then we can say, okay, we did it, and we did it without the wars and revolutions that in the past
Yeah, so
characterized this kind of change.
let's call it a soft transition. I like this word because without any damage, we can change our mindset very quickly because there's a need for that. And we see it in a daily news that how hospitals went out from this and these devices, and how big companies could suddenly be able to help this. So it's I think it is forming our value system, and in a very short time, and maybe that's needed for the planet from ecological point of view.
Yesterday, we had a guest, David De Wert, who is coordinating currently in almost 70 languages the translation of the documentation and various additional materials for the open source medical devices
Sure.
initiative that is really taking the world by storm. A few weeks ago, in the Facebook discussion group, there were 2,000 participants, and now they are almost 80,000 participants
Yeah.
with extreme enthusiasm, creating a lot of value, saving a lot of lives
Yes.
based on those open source
Yes.
participatory
And y- and
principles.
and you know what? When I remember back to Turin in 2015, as you and Alex said, it needs 5 years at least to turn out if there is a need for this approach. And we just after 4 years, it's still a question, but not anymore for me.
Well, that's right. The failure of the traditional supply chains and of the approaches that we trusted to provide, even
Hmm.
in the most advanced countries, for the needs of the healthcare infrastructure, healthcare professionals, but also the people who are sick and dying,
Sure.
is a proof that these different approaches are really necessary, and we must leverage them.
Yeah. And the last few weeks was a real roller coaster because we got also a lot of calls to use the platform as a source of medical devices and blueprints. And we started to produce a few in Hungary in one of our partner maker space. So, it needs, it seems it happens simultaneously in different part of the world in the same time. So it's good to see that.
So, going back to Envienta, what is the stage of the project? I don't know in Bergamo, Italy, or Karachi, Pakistan, or Nairobi, Kenya, but if I am in Budapest, Hungary,
Hmm.
can I leverage the Envienta platform to do something? Maybe not an entire house, but something
It's
that
yeah,
I
sure.
can say, point at it and say, okay, this is the first step, and there will be 1,000 more steps, but this has been put
Okay.
together through the Envienta platform.
Yeah, it's still in beta phase, but you can register, upload the blueprints, invite others to collaborate, and you can decide if there is the blueprint is ready to distribute or to publish or not, because it's very important for a work group to be sure that the blueprint which goes out and someone start to produce something will not blow up or something like that. So some quality and the security issues here. Um, But in this case of medical devices, I think it's a great source to find them. We just started to upload them in several languages, so we are on uh, the house is on fire, let's say. And also, which is missing, but we have development of local or short supply chain systems. So it's some kind of keyword search engine which enable peer-to-peer collaborations in a given area. So we have to connect with it with the platform. So we are participating in many hackathons and make it an open source way to make the code working. And also we have a partner in India collaborating with us to issue our cryptocurrency, which is it's a utility token which are able to start the value exchange and the licensing model on the platform. So yeah, a lot of modules needs to be developed, but step by step we can go forward. But now you can use it for storing blueprints and make access to anyone to other part of the world.
Now, the slogan "open source everything" is very ambitious and quite absolute, right? Open source
Okay.
everything. So,
Okay.
especially in America, they love these ambitious statements,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes they even put them in their constitution, right?
Hmm.
And then that ambition, as it is codified, becomes a source of interesting implications. And
Hmm.
sometimes they are trying to be coherent to the principle in the face of every other country and people looking at them horrified. And this is the case, for example, of the Second Amendment of the US Constitution, which says, in based on the current interpretation, and we don't know what the interpretation was then, but the
Hmm.
current interpretation is that Americans should have the right to have weapons, right? And then they
Hmm.
have to use them in a certain way. But there are so many weapons in America now that it is impossible to assure that they are used appropriately according to the law. And then there are these phenomena like school shootings that is just horrifying as you look at it with the measures of other countries where these things just don't happen. But still, Americans are sticking to their guns, as the saying goes, except when they don't. Because a few years ago, an open source movement for
Yeah,
making guns
I've got
emerged.
I've got a lot of nights when I cannot sleep because of that. So that's why
And
it's very important.
3D printing of guns is
Yeah,
a reality and a
but
possibility.
but the thing is that how we can put this into the global conversation, because it's not just about this open source platforms and blueprints, but how we can think about technology, the role of technology, the connection between technology and society and the economy and the ecology. So yeah, we have to start a lot of conversations. So that's why, for example, this open source everything approach includes the 12 sectors of regenerative development goals, which we started in the name of Hack Humanity. And Hack Humanity is about raising awareness. It's on hackhumanity.net. And yeah, we started it to not just focusing on open source hardware, but what if we just uh, started focusing on other aspects of life, not just from technology and access to energy and food production, but education and media, self awareness, self development, communities, name it. So these 12 sectors of regenerative development goals is some kind of um, developed version of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as we see that are things that were not sustainable anymore. So, and when we see this approach, we can easily find out that yeah, we can open source every kind of information, just like Google wanted in the beginning, and somehow they made it. But we need to have to find a business model on it to work. So from Hack Humanity to Envienta, it's a transformation of how not just business ideas could go forward, but any type of ideas based on volunteerism, or this kind of stuff.
So I don't think we answered, and we can't answer, but we have to take a few steps towards sharing with our viewers and listeners what we believe the right way to go about a freedom of open sourcing everything that can
Hmm.
have negative implications is. So, in these cases, I think it is very appropriate and necessary to talk about conversations that are both
Hmm.
local and global, and that the consequences, very naturally, of those conversations are bottom up or top down or a mix of the two
Hmm.
regulations around the use and the deployment of the technology, because the responsibility of using these technologies appropriately is ours. We cannot wash our hands and say we are just neutral, abstract scientists, and anything we do is for the pure search of knowledge,
Hmm.
and any application of our
Yeah.
results is distant from us, and we bear no
Yeah, yeah,
responsibility,
it's quite utopian. So that's right.
right?
But
So
I think
so
if
so we have
okay.
to understand, and we have to be explicit about the fact that the consequence of an agreement around what is appropriate and what is the right balance is a regulation.
Yes, in some ways, yes. Um, hmm, how to say? But history shows that maybe the majority are following rules. I mean, if we have constitutional laws and rules, we mostly following them. But we also have, let's say, self-awareness, or some kind of hmm, inner knowledge about how to do things on the right way. So, but that's an intuition from my side. But I see more and more people to follow that way, because somehow they
Okay.
want something new and they are creative enough to make some steps. And I have a hope that could work.
Um, Jackson Dukpa is saying hello
Hi, Jackson.
from the
I know him.
beautiful country of Bhutan.
Yep.
And Bhutan, of course, aims to develop in a very different manner than Western countries, because it aims, I don't know how successfully, to substitute the concept of GDP, gross domestic product, with GDH, gross domestic
Hmm.
happiness. And of course,
More
um,
measurements needed. Yeah.
well, I don't have enough information about how successful
Hmm.
this aim has been concretely, but it is a very, very interesting experiment for sure. Uh, Emiliano is talking about anarchism, uh, which to him means to self-impose the rules so that others don't feel the need to impose the rules on you. In some
Sure.
way, that could be a definition, and of course, there is a lot of prejudice against anarchism, because a lot of people equate that with the lack of the lack of order, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anarchy, what a lot of people believe is a synonym for chaos, but anarchy actually is the lack of the need to impose order from the
Yes, it's a
outside
peer-to-peer
because
collaboration, let's say.
it emerges
Yeah.
from the inside. Uh, Jackson is also asking us to talk about Better World Alliance, which is a little bit paradoxical because it is Jackson's organization. So certainly not you, Gabor, and certainly not me, but there's nobody else better to talk about Better World Alliance than Jackson himself. And I invite him
Okay.
to do so either on a live show that Jackson can start, or to come as a guest on with us
Great.
in the near future.
Great.
So, what are the next steps for Envienta as a project for your team? Of course, it is complicated, like for everybody, because whatever your plan were in November or December, your plans now are completely
Yeah.
different. But
Yeah, but what remains the same are the people who are working on a given project. So the most important thing, what I realized in the past 2 years, because it was 5 years of traveling and meeting people and organizing groups and the events and projects and sub projects, that the people in any given team has to know much better each other, not just for the need of working together, but on a personal level. So, and in this situation, in this crisis, what we um, experience is the unity of those people, not just in Envienta, but I'm now in Hungary, but I've seen in other places also in Africa, and other partners can say that also, that somehow the pieces come together, and it's I think it's a magical transformation in a way, if we are able to open source everything. Yeah.
and what can our viewers do if they are inspired by the messages that they hear, and they want to get involved either locally by spearheading an initiative that is inspired by Envienta, or directly in partnership with you? What is the next step? What should they be doing?
Look, we have all the social media sites, groups on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, but for development, we are using Telegram mostly. So if you use Telegram, you just type in Envienta and you get few groups which you can join. And it in the turn out it's better to work purpose um, to using these channels. So, and you can just type in the Google Ambient and you can find some blogs on Medium and our YouTube channel. And we started to create a media lab in collaboration with Canadian partners and also with African and Indian partners. So we've seen that it's a lot of importance in showing what we are doing. So it's not just a bunch of people working in rooms and on the internet, but we actually want to make ourselves more visible by showing other projects which are connecting this in this open source manner.
Wonderful. Um, One new tradition that I'm introducing today with you is to name or nominate one or two guests that you think I should try to get on the show, who you believe is a good continuation, a kind of a stepping stone, not necessarily in a fixed direction, but in a narrative, in a journey that these conversations are treading. So if you have a name or two in mind, then what we will do is to list these names, and there will be an opportunity for our viewers to vote on davidorban.com/SFTQL, searching for the question live/guest vote. And I will display that URL.
It's a great
Do you
initiative.
have
Like it.
anybody in mind?
If you know Michel, I'm sure you know Michel
Oh yeah,
Bauer.
I know Michel. So you think he would be a good guest?
Yes,
Very good.
because it could be a good continuation of this conversation, for example, in terms of cosmological production.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. So let me see if I can display very quickly the URL, sorry, the page corresponding to the URL as well. Because the page is open and I need to update it because I see there are some names of people who have already um, been on the show. So I need to clean up
Yeah, sure.
the requests. And so here, people can come. And so what I would ask you is to go there, write in Michelle
Mm-hmm.
Bowen's name, and then you can also vote on others. But for example, we already had Baratunde, so I can take him off.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't a number of fixed slots. We can have a long list, and then we can have all kinds of gamified participation to make sure that somebody gets peer pressured into joining, even if
Yeah.
they are saying no, I don't know about that show. Maybe it is bad or stupid. I don't want to go. But if enough people tell them, no, we love you, we are your fans, we want you to be on the show, then they will come.
It's good to see Alex on the top, so I would be interested to see you
Absolutely,
again.
it will be fun. I already invited him, and he now
Cool.
needs to confirm and then pick a day. So, Gabor, thank you very much for being here with us. I'm
Appreciate
looking
it.
forward to see your project flourish and develop healthily. And I invite all of our viewers to check it out and to get involved. Thank you very much.
Have a good time. Bye bye.
So, thank you very much for joining Searching for the Question live. And Gábor nincs itt, illetve most már nincs velünk együtt, de Emiliano azt kéri, hogy magyarul mondjam, viszontlátásra. He can come back.
Viszontlátásra.
Viszontlátásra, Gábor, nagyon köszönöm.
Sziasztok.
And Emiliano is a constant friend and a prankster of the show. So I'm very happy when I can, just give him feedback and
Yeah.
have him participate. Um, so I am always happy to receive your feedback in ways like I showed, where you can vote for the next guests and suggest new names yourselves. You can join the Discord channel, sign up for my newsletter, and of course, as I said, if you believe that searching for the question live provides value, you can become a supporter on Patreon, where the proceeds of your support will help me and my team to keep producing this show as well as others that I am putting together. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. The guest tomorrow will be interesting because he is in Beijing, China. He is gracious enough to stay up at 1 a.m. In the night to join us. but certainly the tales that he's going to share with us are going to be very interesting. So make sure to tune in tomorrow as well. Thank you and see you.